Welcome to the Arun Church podcast, where our mission is bringing life to everyone, everywhere, every day. Each podcast episode features the latest talk from our church, which are released weekly. We're passionate about Jesus, love to worship together, and are committed to changing our community for the better. Connect with us at arunchurch.com.
Thanks, Becca. Yeah, great. So I'm really excited to bring this story to you this morning. But before we start, as always, Aaron, we always like a question, don't we, to begin with? So today's question from me is, we got it coming up? There we go. As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up? So have a little think. When you were a child, what did you want to be? And just whisper it to the person next to you. We don't have to whisper, but just say it quickly to the person next to you. What did you want to be when you grew up? Okay, brilliant. Okay, so put your hand up if you are doing that thing, the thing that you just said to the person next to you. Put your hand up. Yeah, we got one over there. Amazing. Yeah, Beth, brilliant. Yeah, is that just two? Two in a room. Three. There we go. Put your hands up if you're not that thing. It should hopefully be everybody else. Put your hands up if you're not that thing. Yeah, most people. So even from a young age, we have plans, don't we? We have plans for our life. We think we want it to look like this. And my little one, Primrose, is up there, has gone through about 10 definite jobs. She's only 9, and she's very definite every time about what she's going to do and what she wants to be when she grows up. So we start off in life, don't we, like this? And often we have plans that we want to follow. And some of us are brilliant at trying to, make a plan and stick to it and get to it. Some of us, like me, aren't as good at doing that. But do you know what? What happens to most of us on our journeys in life? Like, most of your hands went up saying you're not that thing. Usually in our lives, what happens is we make different choices than we think we're going to make. The opportunities before us are different than we think they're going to be. And sometimes it's just the circumstances. Sometimes it's things that are completely out of our control lead us in a different direction than we think or maybe hope to go in, don't we? And out of all of those of us here who have followed God for any length of time, really, who here has known God moving at some point in their lives and directing them in a certain way? I wonder. Put your hand up. Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? That's amazing. So in terms of what we wanted when we were little, there's only like a couple of hands up. But in terms of us hearing from God and God leading us, most of us here, certainly those of us who've known God for a while and have known God's hand working in our lives. Well, today's story, Esther, is interesting for so many different reasons. But one amazing, really interesting thing, which I don't think I really realized before, many of you probably did realize this, is that God is not mentioned once in the book of Esther. Not once. He's not hinted at. His name isn't mentioned. It's not talked about. So the Jews are talked about, but not kind of Judaism in that sense. It's not mentioned at all. And so that makes it a really unique story within the Bible, because all the other stories, think about what we've looked at in the last few weeks even, are very clear that God is at the front and the center, and we see God doing amazing things. But this story, the author is really clever. The author hasn't done that. He could have done. He could have put God forefront in the center, but he hasn't. He's invited us to look for God's activity in the story. He's kind of said, like, yeah, come and find him. Come and find where God was at work in this story. Now, I am going to try so hard not to go into too much detail, because this book is a whole book in the Bible. It's 10 chapters. It's probably about a half-hour quick read, or it's a very long read if you're sitting, highlighting and circling and writing notes. Now, please, this is my homework right at the beginning. Go home and read the book of Esther, but don't just read it from start to finish. Read it with a highlighter. Read it with a little notepad, and note anything that's interesting to you, anything that just stands out or makes you kind of go, "Whoa, that's really interesting." There's so much in it that if I even began to tell you the detail, we would be here for a very, very long time. So I'm going to try super hard not to do that, but I'm just going to give you a brief overview. So Esther was this book in Esther is found in the 5th century BC. About 50 years or so after Daniel, and we know kind of Daniel, and the Jews are allowed to go back to Jerusalem at this point into Israel, but many of them are still in exile. So Esther lives with her uncle Mordecai, and they're still in exile, so they're in the land of Persia. So we've got some maps coming up. There we go. This is ancient Persia, the Persian Empire at the time, and it's a huge empire. It ranges from Egypt down there through the north of Africa, and if you see the green, it's all that green that goes right the way to India. It's huge. 127 provinces. And at the time, it's ruled by a king called King Xerxes. So this is where we find ourselves in this time. In a city called Susa, which you can see kind of in the middle there, which is in modern-day Iran. That's where we find the story happening. Now, at this time, we have got Esther, who lives with Mordecai. She's just an ordinary Jewish girl living with her uncle, living an ordinary life. Now, King Xerxes isn't a great guy. He's very powerful. He's very wealthy, but he is a bit of a partier. He is quite big-headed. He is that kind of power-hungry figure that just wants to control everything and rule everything. And so he decides to put on this huge banquet. Now, I wonder if you just can have a think about the longest party you've ever been at. I mean, mine might just be till like kind of early mornings. I don't know, maybe 5 a.m. or something like that many years ago. Something like that. You know, that's the kind of length of party I've been to. Maybe some of you have been to some parties that lasted a lot longer than that. But this banquet that the king held was for 180 days. Roughly how much is that? About half a year. A party that lasts half a year. Who thinks that's exciting? Put your hand up. Who does that make you kind of feel panicked inside? All right, a lot of chatting, okay? 180 days. And he invites to this banquet, he invites all the nobles and the princes and the rulers in the kingdom. And the wine is flowing, they've got the dancers in. He's going, look at my money, look at my wealth, look at everything I've got. And the current queen, called Queen Vashti, she's over in a different place hosting a banquet for the women. So then the 180 days finishes, it's not enough. They decide, hang on, we need another 7 days. That's what we need. We need another 7 days partying. So the king invites all the local people, all the local men, everyone from the kingdom to this party. And he's kind of like, whoa. And they drink more and they're drunk and they're kind of, and it says in the Bible, that's what's happening. And then near the end of these 7 days, he says to his queen, Queen Vashti, he says to the servants, go fetch Queen Vashti. Go fetch her. I'm going to show my wife to these people too. And this party is just a room full of drunk, power-hungry men and so bringing Queen Vashti before them, it's not a nice thing for Queen Vashti. This is a horrible thing to be asked to do. And she's asked to wear her crown. Now, some scholars think that might have meant just her crown. Just her crown. That's what some scholars think. That's not me making that up. Some scholars think that. Some scholars think it's a crown, but that means her face is unveiled. So it might be simply that. But either way, for Queen Vashti, she's the queen. This is not what she's there for. She is there as you know, with the king. She's not equal to the king, absolutely not. But she's there with the king. And this is something that concubines would have done. So basically, the women that were there to come in and sleep with the king and the men, not the queen. And she does something which many people have said was arrogant. I think was very brave. She said no. She said no. I'm not doing it. I'm not coming in. And she knew the consequences that she would face by doing that. So in this story, for me, she's the first heroine. That might be controversial for some, but for me, that's how I read that. You read it, see what you think. But for me, I think, wow, wasn't she brave? Because she knew her identity was the queen. And she was like, I am the queen. That is not my identity. I am not a concubine. I am the queen, and I'm not doing that. And she knew that there would be consequences, and she paid the consequences. She was thrown out of the palace, and King Xerxes was so angry. He was angry with his queen, and he said to his advisors, he was like, what shall I do with the queen? And these guys, okay, all kind of drunk and all kind of in the middle of the party, they were like, oh my goodness, if Queen Vashti says no to you, then all our wives are going to say no to us. And so the king makes a decree which commands all the wives in the kingdom to be submissive and under, even more than they already were. They were already under the husband, but it was another level of you will obey your husband or you're out. No questions asked. And so this is the start of our story. Sometimes Esther seems like a kind of a romantic, like, oh, there's this lovely girl and she comes and she's beautiful. The start of the story is this awful thing where this queen says, no, that's not who I am. I'm going into detail. And then the next bit of our story is after this decree is declared, the king kind of goes, oh no, I banished the queen, didn't I? I quite liked the queen. She was quite pretty. I've banished her. What am I going to do now? And the king's great advisors, some of you guys might agree with this. If you do, get some prayer, please. The king's great advisors said to him, it's okay, King Xerxes. Don't worry. What we're going to do is we're going to round up all the beautiful women in the empire. And you can have one night with each of them. What do you think that means? One night with each of them. Do we say, sometimes people say it's like a beauty pageant. Is that just a beauty pageant? One whole night, it says they go in the evening and they come out in the morning? No. They have one night with the king and he says, are you good enough to be my queen or not? He's still going to be sleeping with them, right? And if they're not good enough, off they're out. And then their life is forever changed. They come as virgins and they leave broken. They're brought in as slaves. It's not kind of, pick me to be the queen. They're brought in as slaves. This is a horrible story. Esther, the young Jewish girl, comes in that way, as she's brought in that round of women being rounded up and brought in. She's rounded up and brought in. And they're young women. They're young women. They're young virgins who are beautiful. And Esther is one of those. The ladies were to spend a whole year getting beauty treatments. Now, some of you guys might love the idea of a year getting beauty treatments, but not if you know what's coming at the end. 6 months with myrrh, the oil and myrrh, then 6 months with spices and perfumes, and then they're there for the night before the king. And their whole life, destiny is in his hands at that moment. And Esther's one of these. Now, Esther finds favor before she's got to the king's door. She finds favor in that year when she's there being prepared. She finds favor with the king's servants. And that to me says that she's not just beautiful. There's something in her spirit that captivates those people around her. That makes people think, this is someone different. This young girl is different. So the servants and the people around and the eunuchs, they help Esther to know what pleases the king. And so by the time Esther arrives and it's her night to be with the king, she's kind of armed and tooled with what to bring to that space. Now, there's some wisdom in that, and it's a strange one because you think this young girl who's spent this year like this, she's been brought in captive, in slavery, and this is her night. But she's chosen, even in that place, to stand and to make a stand and find favor in the king's eyes. So that's what happens. She comes in and the king is beguiled and he's like, wow, she's amazing. She's beautiful, kind of starry-eyed. He's quite a fickle guy, I think, this king. But he chooses her to be queen. He chooses her, and she's an orphan girl from a Jewish background, hiding her Jewish heritage. At this point, she's hiding that she's a Jew. Her real name originally was Hadassah. So she changes her name from Hadassah to Esther. And her identity is hidden. Do you remember Queen Vashti? She knew her voice because she knew her identity. Her identity was queen. And she said, no, I will suffer the consequences, but I'm not doing that. That's not my identity. Esther's hiding her identity. She's in fear. She's hiding her identity. She's changed her name. Nobody knows that she's Jewish. So that's what happens here. Okay, so Esther's uncle, now I'm going to skip. I think that's quite an important bit, but now I'm going to skip forward. So Esther's uncle, Haman, Esther's uncle, who's called Mordecai, not called Haman. Esther's uncle, Mordecai, comes every day to the king's gates to check on Esther and see what she's doing. And one day he's there and he hears a plot to kill the king. So he tells Esther, he says, Esther, these guys are going to try and kill the king. Esther goes to the king and the king's life is spared and everyone's happy with Mordecai and this is great. This is quite quickly forgotten and life moves on. The king brings up one of his noblemen called Haman. Can everyone say Haman? Haman is our baddie. Shall we do a good old pantomime? Boo, we're getting towards Christmas. Ready? Haman, boo. All right, okay. So Haman is this nobleman that's brought up, and he is so proud and full of himself, walking around like, I'm the king's favorite. Look at me. I'm the king's favorite. Do what I do. Kneel before me, people. Kneel before me. And he actually gets the king to pass a decree so that everybody has to kneel before Haman. So when Haman goes, people are kneeling before Haman, but Mordecai the Jew refuses to kneel down before Haman. Sound a bit like Daniel? Yeah? Refuses to kneel down. So Mordecai refuses to bow before Haman. Haman is absolutely furious with this. He's furious. He's full of rage. He's full of anger. And not only does he say, right, I'm going to kill Mordecai, he's so cross. He's like, do you know what? I'm not just going to kill Mordecai now. I'm going to kill all the Jews. I'm going to get the king to annihilate all the Jews in the kingdom. And he sits in this place of rage and anger and bitterness, and it grows and it grows. And every day he casts lots to see if that's the day he should be going to the king to ask. Every day. And for almost a year, it's not the right day. And then in the 12th month, he goes to the king and he says, hey, King Xerxes, there's this guy and he doesn't, and his people, and they don't bow down before me, which means they're not really following your rules because you've told everyone to bow down before me. So the king is so kind of like, Haman, you're amazing, that he lets Haman write a decree. And it's said, it's written, and it's sent out to all the provinces, 127 provinces, that every single Jew, man, woman, and child will be killed. And it sets a date for almost a year in advance, that every single one will be killed. Every single one. And in the provinces, there's wailing and there's mourning, and they put on their sackcloth, because I don't know about you. If somebody came to the UK today and said, this time next year, and they're in charge, and this is a law, and it's put in place, every single Christian is going to be killed. Every single one of you. Yes, your whole family, all of your children, all of your people. This time next year, you'll all be dead. On the one day, you're all going to be killed. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's it. That's it done. Can you imagine? I don't think we can, actually. I don't think we can imagine that. And there's wailing and mourning. And Mordecai puts on his sackcloth and goes to the king's gate. He's not allowed into further than that because he's in the sackcloth. And Esther hasn't heard, she doesn't know anything about any of this because she's living in this kind of palace bubble. And she hears that Mordecai's there in his sackcloth, and she says, she kind of goes and she says, give Mordecai some. What's Mordecai doing? He's being embarrassing. He's going to draw attention to himself. I mean, I'm making this bit up, but that's what she's thinking. And she says to the servants, give him some clothes. Make him put some clothes on. Make him put some clothes on. This is what's happening. And she gets worried because she knows something is going on, but doesn't know what's going on. So Mordecai tells the servant what's going on. He says, no, I'm not putting those clothes on. Tells the servant. The servant tells Esther all about what the decree is and everything like that. And Mordecai says through the servant to Esther, Esther, we need you. We need you to step up. We need you to stand in. Now we know that Esther says yes, don't we? But she didn't straight away. She didn't immediately say yes. Her immediate reaction was fear, which is fair enough. Yeah? Because she's hiding who she is. They don't know that she's a Jew. Her immediate reaction wasn't to step up. Her immediate reaction was, but I'll be killed. I can't go to the king. I can't go to the king because I'm not allowed to go to the king unless I've been called. I haven't been called for 30 days. That's not a good marriage, right? She's not seen him for 30 days. She's just a woman in the harem with lots and lots of other women. Yes, she's the queen, but that's kind of what she is. And then Mordecai says this, and we'll probably know this quite well. Mordecai says to her, I'm just going to skip some of that one. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Esther's immediate reaction was fear. But then she responded with a yes. And her response was fasting. Go, send them out. They're going to tell everyone to fast, and I'm going to fast. So that's a glimpse of God in that. That's a glimpse of, she did know her Jewish heritage. She did know the traditions. She did know what was happening because she was fasting. And we can presume in that she was most likely praying. Otherwise, what's the point in fasting? So she would have been calling on God in that time. I think it doesn't say that. And then what happens after that is she decides to ask the king to another banquet because she knows this king loves banquets, right? He loves his drink. He loves his banquets. So Esther knows, and she plans a banquet, and she says, hey, king, come to the banquet. And she invites Haman. Boo. Yeah. She invites Haman and the king to the banquet. So they come to the banquet. thinking, oh yes, this would be wonderful, Queen Esther. We'd love to go to a banquet. Haman's there all proud of himself. He's telling everyone, I've been invited to a banquet with the queen and the king. Just me. He's all excited. And he goes to the banquet, and they have one day at the banquet, and the king says, I'll give you anything you want, Esther, up to half the kingdom. And she says, come back tomorrow. She's very clever. She knows. She's like, come back and let's drink some more tomorrow, and I'll ask you then. So they leave this banquet. Haman leaves, and he's all kind of full of himself. And it says in there that he's full of happiness and joy. And then immediately he sees Mordecai, who refuses to bow down to him. And all that happiness and joy is gone in an instant. And he's full of rage and full of anger. He goes home, and his wife, Haman's wife, says to him, I'll tell you what, let's just build a huge big gallows, and then we'll kill Mordecai tomorrow, and he can be impaled on this huge, and tells him how high to build it and what to build. And so that's what happens. So then that gets built. The next morning, Haman goes back to the palace. Meanwhile, in the evening, the King Xerxes can't sleep. He can't sleep. I wonder why he can't sleep. I wonder if God's got anything to do with that. He can't sleep. So he asks the servants to bring in the Chronicles, which tells about different things that have happened in the kingdom. When that happens, they read that evening about Mordecai saving the king's life. And so the king is like, well, what's been done to honor this guy Mordecai? And the servants say, nothing. We haven't done it. And the king was like, what? Let's do something amazing to honor him then tomorrow. So the next day, Haman comes back to the banquet, full of himself, excited. He's got the gallows built. He's super excited. He's gonna get Mordecai killed before the rest of the Jews, because he can't wait any longer to kill him. And he steps into the court just as the king is saying, I wonder if there's any nobleman around who I can ask about what to do to honor Mordecai. Haman walks in to see the king, all proud of himself. And the king says, Haman, what do you think I should do to honor a nobleman who has done something amazing? Haman immediately thinks, I know he's talking about. He's talking about this guy. And so he thinks, what would I love to happen to me? So he says to the king, put a robe. I know what to do. He says, I think what you should do is you should get a royal crown that the king has worn and place it on his head. I think you should get a royal robe that the king has worn and place it on him. I think you should get a royal horse that the king has rode. And I think you should get another nobleman to lead the horse throughout the country with that very important nobleman sitting on the horse. Haman thinks, yes, I've made it. Mordecai's going to die. I'm going to be led through the palace like this. And then the king says, bring Mordecai. And Haman has to put the crown on Mordecai, has to put the robe on Mordecai, has to sit Mordecai on the horse, and has to lead Mordecai through the palace, honoring Mordecai. Maybe even past the gallows, who knows? And at this point, Haman panics. But it's okay, because he's going to get to go to the banquet with Queen Esther, so it's going to be all right. In the end, Haman goes to the banquet with Queen Esther, and Queen Esther says, hey, king, by the way, I'm Jewish. And so that means I'm going to die, and you've done this, you've declared this decree, and it's Haman who's done it. The king is enraged, and it says the king goes out to the garden. He's full of anger. He goes out to the garden, he's cross with Haman. And Haman then falls at Esther's feet. Please save me, Esther, save me, Esther, save me, Esther. The king comes back in, sees Haman doing this, thinks that he's trying to rape, it says this, thinks he's trying to rape Esther, and he immediately orders his execution. The guards say, oh great, there's some new gallows just out there. And Haman is killed. And then later on, there's a decree that rescues, that allows the Jews to fight back and to kill their enemies. So they can't take back the law that the king had already decreed, but they add that on so that the Jews can fight for their kingdom and fight for their survival. And so that's what happens on that day that was meant for their destruction. They see victory because Esther said yes. Esther, an orphan Jewish girl, who was a slave in captivity, who found favor, who wanted to say no because she was fearful, but when she recognized and stepped into her true identity, who she was, she set not only herself free, but she set the whole of her people and stopped them from being annihilated. Now, none of us are in that place. None of us are Esther in that place, but we sit in the place of comfort, don't we? In our own lives, we sit in the place of comfort. We all do. Every single one of us here. Even those of us who, maybe are going through something difficult at the moment, we still sit in such a place of comfort. And it's tempting sometimes to sit in that place of comfort and think that we're all fine. But really, that place of comfort can so often be a place of captivity. Queen Esther was in the palace, but she was not free. She was captive. She was a slave. When we sit in our comfort, in our own bubbles, in our own world, sometimes scared to step out or can't be bothered, may I suggest that we're sitting in captivity? May I suggest that there's another alternative that we could look to? May I suggest that for such a time as this, you were born? For such a time as this, you were born. For such a time as this, you were given your true identity is going to come out. And your true calling and purpose, that maybe you haven't heard God, maybe he's silently in the background working away, and you don't know that he's been actively moving piece by piece by piece, so that you're sitting here this Sunday morning, so that he can say to you, hey, I've got plans for you. And when you open your mouth to speak, do not remain silent. When you open your mouth to speak with wisdom, and after some prayer maybe, and after some fasting, generally a good idea, then speak. Now is a time. For such a time as this. And who are the people that we are setting free? Who is that? Well, ourselves. When we step into that place with God, into his kingdom, we set ourselves free. But do you know what? There's a whole world that is held captive out there. A whole world that, as Becca was saying when she was doing the communion and talking about eternal life with Jesus and coming to him, there's a whole world that aren't in that place, that needs to hear. For if we remain silent, who's going to tell them? Who's going to tell them that Jesus loves them? Who's going to tell them that he can set them free? Who's going to tell them that there's life and joy and love and peace and this amazing kingdom waiting to be discovered, to be explored, to be jumped into? Being a follower of Jesus isn't comfortable. It shouldn't be. If you're comfortable, we're doing something wrong. If I'm too comfortable, I'm doing something wrong. That is not what we are called to do. But living in the kingdom does not mean living miserably in discomfort. It means maybe living in discomfort, but it means living in freedom. It means living with a joy that is so much bigger than anything that the earth can offer, which is so much bigger than any 180-day banquet full of alcohol and women and sex and everything that in wealth and just getting. The kingdom of God is the most incredible, beautiful thing. It's a place where there's freedom and joy and peace and love and life. And that is the message that we have got to share. That is why we should not remain silent. That is why we are here for such a time as this. For our friends, for our families, for our colleagues, for our neighbors, for this nation, for the nations. You're called for such a time as this. When we become children, when we accept Jesus in our hearts, we become children of the King of Kings, which is a royal position. Just like Mordecai said to Esther, who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? You have come to a royal position, you daughters and sons of the King. But not a royal position that has a king ordering us around, commanding and telling us what to do and punishing us terribly when we don't do exactly what he pleases, what he wants us to do. We have a king who calls us into relationship with him, into true love that's beyond anything else. A king who causes us to rule and reign with him because of what Jesus did at the cross. A king who says, come alongside. A king who loves you as you are today. Esther wasn't perfect. What had happened to her? She was defiled. She was brought into slavery. If she'd been rejected by the king, then it would have looked different. She had a really hard start. She was an orphan. We don't know why, but whatever the reason why, that's pain there. That's pain right there at her beginning. And then she's forced to be a slave. But she stands tall, she finds favor, and then she steps into her true identity and sees her whole people set free. Band, do you want to come up? I'd love to invite you to come up, and then we're going to just finish in a moment. We have Jesus, who, as I've already said, is just the most incredible king, a servant king. Esther was an unexpected queen. She was an unexpected freedom fighter. Jesus was an unexpected king. He didn't come, as we know, on a riding in on a royal horse. He came as a baby in his mother's tummy on a donkey. He came as a baby into a stable, and then as he grew, he served with his life. He washed people's feet. He was the servant king, not the king who puts himself, he is above all. But how he serves and loves us is by coming down and saying, washing our feet, sitting with us, eating with us, drinking with us. That's who we serve. Let's show other people this Jesus, this incredible king. You know, doing Alpha, and that we had the Alpha day yesterday. And it is such an honor and privilege to watch God move in people's lives, and to watch people being set free. Not through me or what we've done, but because it's who he is. And when you see that happen, there's nothing that I want to live for more than that. Nothing. Nothing. So my challenge to us, church, is, do we want to live life in comfort, but in captivity? Or do we want to live life with courage in the kingdom? You can choose, because our King doesn't kick us and force us and push us and make us. Our King says, come on. Come into my kingdom, let's do this together. It might be uncomfortable, but boy, is it going to be good. And he invites us to partner with him in that. Isn't that amazing? So if you can stand, let's stand. Maybe you're Queen Vashti today. Maybe you've stood up for something and you... Maybe you've stood up for something and had to suffer the consequences, and you are kind of still living with that. Then come and up here and we'd love to pray for you. Maybe you're Haman and you've got bitterness that's eating you up inside. The bitterness in Haman didn't get him what he wanted, it got him killed. If you know there's bitterness and rage, that maybe there's someone that when you see them, you just get so angry. That's all you can think about. God wants to set you free from that. He doesn't want you to live under that, to live like that till you die. He wants to set you free. If that's you, come up and we can pray with you. The journey to forgiveness can be difficult, but we can walk with you, and God is with you and he can help you forgive. Maybe you're Mordecai. Maybe you're coming alongside someone and going, hey, it's time to speak up. Maybe you're saying, I can see what you're living in, and you're the one that's been placed there. Maybe you need to call that out in someone else and say, you're placed in the palace. Come on. I'm going to fast with you. I'm going to pray with you. And we're going to see what God's going to do. Maybe you're Esther, and now it's your time to step into your identity. It's your time to step into your identity as a child of the King, because that's who you are. Step into your identity. I'm going to pray, and please do, if you want some prayer, please come forward. If anything that I've said, spoken at all, or maybe the Holy Spirit's been saying something completely different, but you'd love some prayer, come to the front and we'll pray together. Jesus, thank you that you are the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, that you invite us to your table to sit with you, to eat with you. But your table is a place of friendship and laughter and peace and love and forgiveness and grace and mercy. Thank you, God. I pray that we would take steps to live in courage, in your kingdom. This morning in the prayer meeting, Alan said he has a vision of a recurring dream, in fact, is what Alan said. I hope this is okay that I'm sharing this, Alan. He has a recurring dream of the walkway into Arun being filled with people and people just pouring in. They're going to come because of God, but they need you. They need you to step in and speak up in their lives. So God, we pray that. We thank you for the day when this church is bursting at the seams. We thank you for what you're doing now and what you've started. But we thank you for the day when we're so big we can't fill this space. Not because of Arun, but because of you, because of the life that is to be found in you. And I pray for everyone here that you would give us courage and boldness to step into our true identities, into what you've got for us. Amen.